Welcome everybody to our next general body meeting, which is a very special one because we have a few great presenters here, outstanding presenters, including John Paz and some of his colleagues who are going to be talking about just their introduction into the tech com field, how they got their jobs, and just advice to share with us tonight. And John said it himself, it's like a superstar cast from all over the industry, and there's a lot of exciting things to be shared here tonight. So thank you for joining us. And today we just want to share a few FTC announcements before we begin. There's going to be a lot going on throughout the rest of the semester, including continued weekly meetings, just like this one, and also a few other programs. We just launched our newsletter, which has all the details in there, and I'll post it in the chat. And a few highlights are that our club is planning to go to the STC Summit this summer. Our group of 7 attendees received a good amount of funding for it, although we're launching a fundraiser to receive the rest of the amount because we just need some more to reach us to the full funding capacity. And so we're putting that out in our advertisements and places like our Discord. And once we have those out, feel free to spread the word about it. And also on top of that, we are planning an in-person reunion social at the end of the semester. That'll be available to alumni, members, graduates, anybody in between. If you're here on this call, if you're listening in, if you're just hearing about it some other means, you're welcome to join that in-person reunion social. That is planned for April 23rd, and details are still pending, but we have an RSVP form set up, and we're going to be spreading announcements more and more as we do that. And finally, too, FTC t-shirts are finally here, and great timing because we have our t-shirt artist in this call right now. We have a great design, and we've got them ready on t-shirts, and you can submit your order form for that. That's on our newsletter and going to be on our socials, Discords, all places like that too. But yeah, we're excited to get that out for you, and it'll be something great to wear at places like the reunion itself or to the summit. If you want to support FTC, be sure to pick up and look at one of those shirts. But intros aside, like I said, we have great speakers here tonight, and I'll let each of them introduce themselves, but we're very excited to launch this meeting today about landing your first job in technical communication. So John, I guess, would you want to go first and then launch things off from there?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And as I always do, if you haven't heard me in my other FTC presentations, I always want to vouch for going to the STC conference on UCF's budget. It's a lot of fun. You'll get a lot of great experience. You get to network with a lot of really fun people. I don't know if Dan, did you ever go to one of the STC meetings on FTC's dime?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think 2-3 times. So yeah, it was great.
yeah, it's a good time. Like it's honestly it's a great introduction to the field and to the kind of people you'll be working with. All much more like-minded than you probably realize. So I always like to plug that for you. So I'll get started here and I'll share my screen. I just have just a couple slides for things that people to look at, so you stop looking at my face while I talk. And I threw the speakers for a bit of a loop in that I told them I was going to introduce them and have them send me a bio, but instead I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So if you're not prepared for that, speakers, be ready for that in a moment, but no worries, this is a very friendly crowd. So just a bit about this discussion, just a preface. I graduated from UCF 2008. I was also a member of FTC for a long time. And these are the kind of presentations that I wish I'd seen when I was coming through. And I do a lot of mentoring now of current students, recent grads, or transitioning professionals. And these are, I always find that people struggle with the same kind of things. It's kind of, it's everyone should recognize that these are growing pains. And it's a new field, and it's so new that even if you got all straight A's and everything you did in university, that doesn't mean that you're going to know everything when you start on day one of the job, and that's kind of the point. I put together a group of people who have a very wide range of experiences, both in the industry and outside of tech com in some instances. But in any case, they're people who I admire very much and think very highly of, and have a range of lots of skills, but it's their stories about their first jobs that I think are most useful to hear. So I'm glad to get to put these folks together. I hope I don't ask any too tough questions, or I sent them beforehand, so hopefully there's no surprises to be had here. But I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and we're going to go in alphabetical order. So of course, Alrieca, that means that you'll be first. So Alrieca, take it away.
Okay, so hi guys. My name is Alrieca Vernal. I am a tech writer. I studied at UCF. I'm sorry, I'm sitting outside. The air conditioning went off. I studied at UCF. I graduated last May, so 2021, right? And I am there doing my master's now. So I'm back at UCF. I've been there since last semester, second semester, working on my master's. I kind of switched things up and I went for the LCT program, which is Literary, Cultural, and Textual Studies, because I was a bit nervous about being a tech writer, but that's a whole different story. Anyways, that story led me here. I met Dr. Paz, and she kept saying to me, she's a lecturer at UCF, why aren't you using your tech writing degree? Then she introduced me to her son, John. He taught me how to use my tech writing degree. So I started my first job with Service Link this week. So that's it. That's me.
I hope y'all caught that Alrieca started her first tech writing job this week, which is this is why it was actually Alrieca that inspired this panel discussion, because her journey, and I'll let her tell that story later. It's obviously with the questions that'll come out, but it was her perseverance and her commitment to figuring this out that led me to believe that she should be sharing her story. So really, this whole thing is an excuse for me to try to get Alrieca to share her story with y'all, because I know otherwise, if she's like, yeah, I'll do it one day, because no one wants to. We're all tech writers, because public speaking is not the first thing that we like to do. So this is my way of sneaking you in here. But Alrieca, could you tell us what you were doing before you're doing technical writing in terms of
I
work?
was substitute teaching. I started that during undergrad because it was flexible. So I kept doing it when I started my grad degree. But as John knows, I was so frustrated because I had outgrown that position. So I'm so happy that the journey led me here. So I was substitute teaching.
That's fantastic. And we'll leave your thoughts on the profession of substitute teaching in the state of Florida to another time, because I went to Florida public schools, and I know that they're not kind to substitute teachers, that's for sure. So, but
it's not that bad, but it's not the space I need to be in. You grow, and it's just not for me anymore. But not that bad.
I hear that. It's not. But I'm glad that you get to use that shiny new degree you got. So you graduated in May, and you've got your first job in March. So
Yeah.
that's a healthy job search. But we'll jump into that. I don't want to jump ahead. So we've got lots of great content and more panelists to talk to. Thank you, Alrieca. Next up, we have Daniel.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Daniel Beck. I graduated UCF in 2009. I was also very involved with FTC at the time. I was president for a year, I think. So this is it's good to be back. Today I live in Cambridge, England. I work for Mozilla. I lead the tech writing team for MDN Web Docs, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, open source documentation project out there. Though, like in my recent past, I've done a lot of freelance work and consulting, and I'm really active in the Write the Docs community. So there's kind of like this professional community focused mostly on software documentation, which has been kind of where I've spent almost the entirety of my career.
Yeah, Daniel was actually a lot of the inspiration for some of my biggest career moves. Like when I was working or when I was going through UCF, and even though I got my first job 2 years before I graduated, and kind of turned that into course credit as a contractor, it was still all in the Orlando area. But when I heard that Daniel had moved across the world and was doing technical writing, I was like, what? It just kind of blew my mind and opened up my perspectives. For those who don't know, in 2015, I accepted a job offer to go work for a company called Atlassian in Sydney, Australia, and they moved me, my wife, and 3 kids across the world for the adventure of a lifetime, and then moved us back to San Francisco. But all that kind of I feel like Daniel, maybe not in a direct way, he may not know this, but definitely inspired a lot of that for me. That you can, y'all should dream big. That technical writing can literally take you across the world. So it was again, I won't steal much more of Daniel's thunder, but it's been a long time coming. I've been following Daniel's career very closely.
That is really gratifying. Thank you, John.
Yeah, no worries. Next up is Debra. How are you, Debra?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
So, it's funny because I think that I have like a really unconventional background for a technical writer because I didn't study anything technical at all. I've always had an aptitude for technology, but like my parents were like political and religious refugees from Central and South America, and I wanted to like save the world and so I studied like political science and comparative religious studies, and I was going to get a doctorate and in these areas and at one point like I still was working on my degree, but even before I had settled on that, like at one point my dad said to me, oh, he was an electrical engineer, and he's like, you should learn Java. And I was like, I want to save the world. But interestingly, I think a lot of people that I've come across in technical writing actually don't necessarily, we come from all different backgrounds. And that's been one thing that's kind of like it's gratifying to know that like there are so many different skills that people can bring to technical writing. Let's see what else you wanted us to talk. Oh, so it took me 13 years to finish my degree. I told my parents at one point to stop paying for college because I was screwing around and I needed to do it in my own time. And I think there's like some relevance there just to like, we all have different paths and life takes different turns. And then right around that time that this happened, I was working in nonprofit and then the stock market crashed in 2008 and I lost my job and I had to fall back on some old skills, and I ended up working for a local government and bounced around there a bit, doing writing at like every single turn, like from being a clerk to working in employee development, and where I really like actually found out that I was in my wheelhouse there and learned about working around doing some content writing and tutorials and getting to work with some software developers and business analysts. And I kind of got my technical writing like taste a little bit there, but it wasn't called a technical writer. And so I know you want to get into this later, but so I had some challenges getting into the technical writing world. And I'm excited to share them with you and talk about it. And I worked for 3 years as a newspaper editor, putting out two weekly lifestyle magazines a week. And I just persevered and met the right people and volunteered for the right things. And now I'm a technical writer, and I'm happy about that and excited to be here. So, okay, I can talk about more of that later as you get through other questions, because I know you have others that I covered in the bio. So.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate that, Debra. And though this may be Debra's first time meeting some of these panelists, maybe Alrieca might be the first I'm thinking of. I talk about Debra a lot in my meetings with people, my mentorship meetings, as the kind of model for the career transition that a lot of people I talk to are making. That she was very deliberate, and she was the first person I ever offered to help with their career, and I did so kind of cautiously, not even sure that I had something to offer. But in doing so, Debra's kind of wild ride of a career has been a joy to bear witness to. So I'm, much like with Alrieca, this is very much an excuse to get Debra to talk to a bunch of people and to share her story so that other people can be inspired. And because it's a fun story, but it does have lots of twists and turns in how she came to technical writing. Thanks so much, Debra. Last but certainly not least is Michael. Michael, how are you?
I'm doing well. Doing well. Thank you, John. Yeah, so my name is Michael Booker. You can call me Booker. That's what most people call me. And I lead the tech writing team for the special projects group at Apple. So I am on I guess a special research development project. I attended Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. That's my hometown and really my first love. And I actually started out there as a double major in biomedical engineering and chemical engineering. And I wrongly believed that I wanted to crunch numbers and like do science for the rest of my life, like after having a stem cell research internship in high school. And so I went to CMU and had a double major in engineering. And after after the fall of my sophomore year, they told me like, Mr. Booker, you had like a 1.1 this last semester, and the semester before that you had I don't know, 1.5, something like that. They said you might have to take a year off, my man. But I decided to switch into technical writing, professional writing. I really always loved to write, and I realized like of my engineering projects, really the only thing I enjoyed was like writing the report afterwards and like doing the grammar and things for my classmates. So really it was the best decision I've ever made. Like I switched into tech writing, professional writing. I straddled the line between journalism and tech writing for a long time. And really probably the most definitive, I guess, decision I made like for my career is that I turned down an internship offer at ESPN to try like a technical writing internship in the Bay. So after I came back and graduated, I graduated after 5 years, took me a while, but I graduated with no job offers, right? And so like I moved back home. And I worked at like an ice cream parlor, like technically like they made Italian ice. I worked there for about a day. Then I came home and my dad was like, "You're working at Rita's?" And so I never went back. I worked at a call center where I lasted a week. And I didn't go back. I certainly didn't have that cut out for me. I don't work nearly hard enough for that. And then I worked at an engineering firm as a recruiter, and then they walked me out after a month. So I was not batting very well for my first few jobs out of school. But then I really just kept pushing, right? I kind of took some time and applied, and I got a contract offer with Siemens as a tech writer. And then I worked there for a year. And, of course, like being a contractor is difficult and hard and, all those sorts of things. But I ended up getting a call from a company I really didn't know much about, but Tesla. And I moved to Reno, Nevada, and I worked there for 2.5 years and then became the lead tech writer at Tesla. And then I wanted to move to the Bay. And so I ended up coming to Apple and then ended up running the team. So I think I just talked about like how I know John. I'd seen like him tweeting about, like tech writing principles and things like that. And so I reached out, like finding tech writers is difficult. And, I think like just being able to make that connection, like, especially early in your career, like I just thought was invaluable. And so I just will always be thankful and appreciative of him, like for his continued outreach, right? For continuing to push like the technical communicators, principles and lifestyle and struggle. Like I just really, really admire. So.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Booker. And it was really funny, man. It's kind of hitting me now as you're explaining your story that you and I have been chasing each other around the country. It seems like because I grew up in Pittsburgh for a little while. I was in San Francisco for a little while, and it's real funny, man. How our careers we've missed each other in the night just by maybe a year or two, man. It's very fortunate. But when Booker actually contacted me, he was considering the switch from Tesla to Apple. And was trying to, talking about salary negotiations, and that's the one thing that I know, especially at that stage of my career, that I'm really good at. If only because I've always had to be really, really aware of the market rates because I need to be able to charge top dollar. That's solid advice for no matter what job you're in. You want to be able to understand what the market will tolerate so that when you negotiate, you have all the most important information. So I had done that hard work, and he reached out to me, and I told him right away. I said, you got to understand that our skills are very, very much in demand, and even though the cost of living adjustments is like you can ask for a lot more, and wanted to make sure that and I give that advice to anybody. I'm always realistic, but you have a unique skill set, and if you got the right drive and the right experiences, you say the right things and get that right opportunity. Technical writing can be very lucrative. I don't say that to brag. I always say that for educational purposes. That it's a career move that, for someone with an English degree, as I am, and some of the panelists are, there's not really a better way to make money. It's a good lifestyle, and it's a lot. You get to work on some fun stuff too. So Michael, I'll jump right into you to talk about, because I had a hard time pointing out specifically, which was your first ever technical writing job.
Awesome, my first tech writing job. Internships count or no?
Yeah, sure. Internship too.
Okay, yeah. So my first tech writing job I had was an internship. It was with a company in the Bay Area called A10 Networks. They did like backend server additions and things like that, like server load balancing, et cetera, et cetera. And so I joined like a tech pubs team of about maybe like 8 or 9 or something, and I was like the only intern. And it was a good experience, right? Like it was, they wrote in Word, which I think is a little outdated, right? But nonetheless, it was a good experience, like to be around the team, kind of like be around. It's probably the largest tech writing team I've still ever been a part of. I think in that way, that's kind of a rarity too. But of course, it just speaks to like just every experience is different, and like I haven't had any role similar to that since then.
And so so you applied for that and you went through the interview process, or did they contact you about that job?
Yeah, I found it myself, actually. I am a terrible procrastinator, right? So like at the end of the school year, I was always the guy, like when the school year is over and it's like, all right, like, man, maybe I should think about getting an internship. So like I got online and just like start hitting places. Half these internships, most of them were filled already. But they ended up contacting me back, and it moved very quickly, like within like the next 2 days.
How many rounds of interviews did you have to do?
Just 2 that time, just for the internship.
Very fortunate, very fortunate. All right, thank you, Booker. Daniel, what was your first job like? How'd you get it?
So I was kind of racking my brain a little bit, like which one counts as my first job? Because like what a tech writing job is, like I feel like it has a big range, and so I'll get into the little details here about the actual kind of my first full-time tech writing job, but I did want to like acknowledge that like I had a job on campus working for what is now the Center for Distributed Learning. I was doing faculty support for the learning management system, and I was writing a lot of email to faculty trying to explain technical stuff to them. And so when I really think back, like really what was my first tech writing job? It was that. It was answering email. But no, my first job I got by being like just lucky. In an unlucky time. So it was like it was like the kind of fallout from like the financial crisis in 2009, and like I had a very charmed college career. Like I had that job at UCF. I had an internship at Google as a tech writing intern, and things were going really well. And then like the economy collapsed, and like kind of my network was like, yeah, there's nothing. But I actually saw a tweet from a company from a service that I subscribed to, and in 2009, this was pretty novel, finding a job through Twitter. And so they were looking for a writer, and I happened to already be quite familiar with the product, being a customer, and I had what, again, in retrospect, this is like really weird. It was a remote job in 2009, and I had like an initial interview like over chat, like there was no like phone call. It was super strange, but it was but hey, I got the job, and that's how I got my first job in tech writing.
Who were you working for?
This was WebFaction. So they're actually
Okay.
defunct now. They eventually got swallowed up. So it was a web hosting company. So the industry has like consolidated over time, and so it got swallowed by a bigger web hosting company, which got swallowed by another one, and then and now it's part of GoDaddy. But it doesn't actually exist anymore. So.
Did you apply for that job, or were you recruited?
I applied. Yeah, I saw the
Yeah.
tweet. I filled in an application and I.
Oh, that's right. So you said
put it in my
the
portfolio
tweet.
link.
That's right. That's right. You were probably the first, one of the first ever to find a job through Twitter.
Yeah. I was trying to explain it to, the old people that I knew at the time, and and going like, oh, it's Twitter. Like, okay, all right, Twitter's this website, and yeah, I think I was, it was definitely strange at the time, and now it's like, all right, yeah, sure, you like search Twitter for jobs.
Yeah, it's a thing. As a current hiring manager, I have looked for candidates and interviewed candidates after finding them through Twitter first. So it's a thing. It's very much a thing. Thanks so much, Dan. Debra, how about you? Your story of your first job is probably my favorite and one of the more dramatic ones. But I won't steal your thunder.
Which one? Which one? Which one? Is this the side work or the 13-day job?
The 13. I was thinking the Oracle actually as well. Yeah, 13-day.
It's not Oracle. It's a different company who shall remain nameless.
Fair enough.
No, I'm just kidding. It was Cisco, and I left
the
the
big
newspaper.
Yeah.
I left the newspaper, and it seemed like a solid, leap. It was a contract position. I was getting paid more than I would have been paid at the newspaper, which was amazing, living in the San Francisco Bay Area, and like basically. The guy who I was reporting to, what's the question? How did I get?
How did you get to? Yeah, I want to know about the job,
okay,
and then
So I was a contract position. I was contacted by a recruiter, and so I ended up accepting a job, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me to get let go from the job 13 days later because the guy told me don't ask any questions.
Ooh.
So naturally that went really against like my core values of like information seeking, and it was not a good fit, but it was like a lot of good things came out of that experience. So
I call this your first job, but you were doing side jobs before that.
Right.
But what was your regular full-time job before that though was at the newspaper, right? It was
I mean it's kind of like how Dan says, like it's kind of like, well, what do you consider technical writing? Because even when I was working for the government, I was doing documentation, and even though I was a trainer, like, and my boss totally wouldn't have considered me doing technical writing, but I was doing the work of a technical writer. I was working with like developers and like helping do microcopy and like helping with steps on how to do things. But I had done a little bit of side work in that time, and then like I left to have a second child from the county, and I just started like networking and like finding people to talk to, anybody that would listen, including yourself, and so.
It's so funny. The night I met Debra, was it like a Write the Docs meetup or something along those, one of the professional meetup, and I promise you that meetup I told myself, because I've just kind of been passed over for promotion, as Debra probably knows. I was looking to become a manager at one point, and I was just not getting any looks, no opportunities, and so I figured if I found people to mentor, that maybe it might be something that I can call leadership experience. Like, so how do you get experience if you don't have experience, and you need experience to get the job? So it seemed like a no-brainer. I was like, oh, I'll just go, and it really was the type of thing I didn't expect to make traction on the first day. But I saw Debra with her notepad, and she had a list of questions, and I was like, you seem like someone who wants to learn more about this industry, and I think I have something to share. And she took me up on it, and I was more surprised she took me up on it than I was that there was somebody actually looking for something like that, what I was trying to do. But very grateful for the opportunity to be able to share that, because it helped me understand my value as someone who is an expert on something. I didn't feel like I was an expert on something until that moment, probably. So just to reiterate, though, Deborah's journey was that she went from a very, a job where she was pretty established already, and made a leap of faith to a short-term contract role, of which she was let go promptly after 13 days.
I had a mortgage to pay, and I had 2 children, and I was like, oh shit, I have no job. It was, if you have other questions about the next step, I can talk about how I got there, but yeah.
And I have to
figured it
admit,
out.
I have to admit that I remember this is the first person I've ever been given career advice to, and she tells me after so much hard work to get a job with a really respectable company, a really what on paper seemed like a really promising opportunity, and then is let go after 13 days. I said, oh my God, I may have steered someone off the right path. I thought maybe I made a mistake, and Debra had to talk me off the ledge and say, listen, I'm a grown up and I'd make my own career decisions. You were just helping me with information. This is the weird, the reverse happened. Now she's consoling me because I'm upset because she lost her job, and it doesn't make any sense. But she has far more internal motivation than I could ever help to provide or assist with, which I'm so grateful for, because if you had broken down at that moment, you were broken from that. I would have been broken with you. We'd have been 2 broken people together, because I wanted it so badly for you, and for you to get it and then have it kind of snatched away felt like a big injustice. But justice was eventually done in the end, and we'll get to that.
It was a gift. It was a gift.
It was. They did you a solid. Every time you told me something about what was going on at work, I was like, that's not normal. You're supposed to ask questions. So it's you're glad you got someplace where you're valued and respected. Last but certainly not least, Miss Alrieca, could you please talk about how you got your first job, of which you're into your first week?
Okay, hi guys, I'm back. So my journey is an odd one. It started with me going back to UCF to do my master's, because I graduated, but then I was like, what do I do with this degree? I did my undergrad online, so I've never been on campus, never engaged with anybody who's a tech writer. I just knew that I wanted a degree in English, but I didn't want to be a teacher. So that's why I chose tech writing. Anyways, I got to my first class on campus, met my professor, Dr. Paz, my favorite. She asked me what I studied in undergrad, and I said, I'm a tech writer. She said, oh, my son is a tech writer. I'm like, probably not like me. I was just like, not the same. I just kept quiet about it. Anyways, every other class, she would tell me something else about tech writing. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, does this lady know I'm incompetent? Does she know I wouldn't know what to do as a tech writer? So I'm here doing the English degree or the English master's. Anyways, next time she came back and she's like, my son is hiring. I called my mom on my way home and I was like, Mom, Dr. Paz is talking about tech writing again, and I want a job, but I don't know what to do. And she said, why don't you ask her for her son's contact information? So I sent her an email. She gave me John's LinkedIn, and then I reached out. He was so ready to meet with me, and I'm like, somebody wants to help me. So he called, we had a little meeting, and he was telling me, no, I felt the same way when I finished my degree. I didn't quite know where to go, but he figured it out. So that's where I went into actually looking for a job. Guys, I had no intention of using the degree because I had no idea what to do with it. Anyways, he kept meeting with me to fix my resume, apply for jobs late last year. So we met in October last year. Exactly, Cora, imposter syndrome. I had it. I was like, what am I going to do with a tech writing degree? I know nothing about IT. That's like literally what I said. Anyways, I met with him, we kept meeting, and I was like, okay, I feel like I could do something with this degree. I had an interview. They asked me how much money I wanted. I told them I guess they didn't like it. They didn't come back to me. John consoled me and we went through it and he's like, it's not the right job. I was like, are you sure? Blah, 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 sadness. Anyways, we kept applying. So all this time, it's like I'm walking along this road and I'm so lost. And then John is holding my hand. And then I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? That's the whole process. Anyways, couple of weeks ago, would it have been? Probably in February, I got a call from this really pleasant lady. She said, you applied. I don't remember. I applied to so many jobs. Anyway, she said, you applied and I really like your resume and I'd like to see where we could take this from. She's a recruiter. Anyways, she liked me. I liked her, Christina. She asked for some reference. Here I come pulling my John card again. Hey, can you answer a phone call for a reference for me? Next step, she helped me to get into the interview with Service Link. I did the interview, met a really nice lady, Jenny. She's so great. She starts the questions. I'm like, hi, Jenny, nice to meet you. I get into telling her about my background. Then she starts asking about experience. I was like, everybody asks for experience, but I don't understand where we are supposed to get it from. This is me trying to find a job in the industry. And she was like, yeah, I have kids and I know they're graduating soon. So here I go, meeting somebody that's just aligned on the same path. Couple days later, she responded telling me that she really liked my drive, my interest in just getting into the field. And I think that's really important, having people who will bet on you, because apparently there was a next candidate up for the job and she gave us a sample work to see where our skills at. Here I go pulling my John card again. Hey, can you look this over? He looked over my sample, lots of correction. Guys, I don't know what I'm doing. Anyways, I made the corrections. I sent her the sample. Couple of days later, someone else calls in. Hey, we're going with you. We're proceeding. So I was like, with me? Anyways, they proceeded. Yeah, apparently the guy that was up for the job, he had 20 years experience, but not a similar drive. And his guide had a lot of unnecessary information, which would have been surprising to me. But I think what I learned from that is a fresh mind matters, because even this week she said to me, Jenny, the person I report to, she was saying to me, you're still eager to learn. You just graduated, and that gives me the right person to work with, because you're still in a mode of learning. So I'm saying that to say, don't be intimidated because you have no idea what you're doing. Sometimes the fresh mind makes sense because it gives them a fresh perspective. It's like, okay, this is a blank slate. So far, I know that Service Link is in the mortgage industry. I know that they send appraisers out to check on properties. I barely know anything else. And I just keep watching the videos, reviewing the guides they have so far. But it works for me because I'll do a great job knowing that I am a user who has no idea what to do. And I'll keep pushing. But that's my story. I finished my first week and here I am.
Well, congratulations on that. It's an accomplishment. Don't let anybody tell you differently, and you're worthy of it. Alrieca's story is perfect example of the kind of thing that I want people to take away from this discussion. That I think every one of the stories that you just heard, and I'll share mine before we get to the next question, because mine is very similar. That most of it takes a lot of applications. Takes a lot of applications. Sometimes it can take a lot of interviews. Sometimes it happens right away. You shouldn't expect it to happen right away, and you definitely shouldn't get discouraged if you get a lot of no's. I mean, when you're just starting out, it's a numbers game. It can feel like it's a fool's errand, like that you're just spinning your wheels, that you get no back, or you get nothing back. You kind of have to looking for a job, your job, 9 to 5. I say don't beat yourself up outside of business hours. But no matter what, there's something, you all have something to offer, and that this field is got enough opportunity out there for all of us, and that there's a reason why we're here, and just got to put yourself out there and be confident that you're deserving of it. And so we'll jump into the next question here. And I'm going to pick folks at random, and may not get to everyone for each question, but if you're itching to answer one, by all means, jump in, chime in, and tell a story. What was your most stressful moment during your first job? And actually, I want to jump in and take this one just from and I'll start with my most stressful moment at my first job. So my first job, I worked for Siemens Power Generation. Again, I told you, Booker, like we've been chasing each other around all over the industry as a contractor, and I got the job while I was already working at a retail chain called Circuit City, which you young kids probably don't know anything about. That used to exist. It used to be Best Buy's biggest competitor. Doesn't exist anymore. Selling TVs and stuff. So I got a call about the job. It was, I was making like $7 an hour, which back then was okay money, I guess. But the job was like $16 an hour as a contractor, doing technical editing. I had no idea what I was doing. And it was at the interview, on my resume, I just had a list of courses that I took in my English degree, which, tech writing courses sounded nice, but I didn't really have any industry experience. And I was upfront about that. They said, "Do you think you can do the job?" And after they told me the details of the job, I said, "Of course." And I had no idea what I was talking about. I just knew that I wanted my first role in this industry, and that I was going to do whatever it took to make it work. And on my first day, they give me access to the systems, and like an engineering report comes up, and I start reading it, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I have no idea how to make this better." It is using so many enormous word choices, terminology, that this escapes me, and it's just so thick with some like sentences that look like paragraphs because of the words that are in them, and it was extremely intimidating. And I spent the first week or two kind of sweating it out, thinking I was going to Google my way out of all my problems, but it wasn't until kind of had like my first check-in, my first one-on-one with my boss. And she asked me, how do you think things are going? And kind of looking at my report numbers, they had some very kind of arbitrary metrics for measuring success, like how many errors are found when someone else reviews my work, and someone else was finding errors and like in my work, and I didn't even understand what the errors were. I had to be frank. I was like, "Listen," I have no idea what the problem is with my work, and I probably need some help with that." And I had to ask for help, and it's probably one of the most painful things I'd done up until that moment. Because up until then, I worked at retail, McDonald's, a bunch of other really small, crappy jobs that I really knew how to do inside and out. It was the first time I'd ever really genuinely not knew how to be good at something, and it was really stressful. But once I got that, I was able to ask for help. Kind of put me on a track. I got some side-by-side assistance with someone who knew what they were doing, and it kind of it all worked out in the end. But it wasn't until I learned to ask for help that I was able to actually make progress and actually start contributing and not feel like I was just wasting space. But that's not unusual. So let's see. I'll pick someone at random. How about Booker? Do you have a stressful moment you can think about during? Maybe it didn't have to be during your first job, but earlier in your career, a mistake you might have made.
Yeah. So as you said, like I worked at Siemens too, but we were on the rail side. Right. So in my my first few months there, they assigned me to take over like all the documentation for the Chicago Transit, right? Like some new like trains that they were putting in or whatever. And we had to make essentially, like these like manuals, right? To like listed out like each part and, took all the pieces of, part or whatever, and all these various like CAD drawings. And I was supposed to edit them like using, I'm sure like Illustrator or something, right? But I had never used that. Like I was a writer, I came from engineering. And so like, actual manipulation of images or like videos and that kind of stuff, like I had no idea. So, we had, a deadline, like I kind of worked to it and did the best that I could and like took my best stab at it. And I I gave it to my boss, and like she looked me in the face and excuse my language, but she said like, "Booker, this is shit." I was like, man, like, whoo, like, all right, I guess I'll just walk right out right now. Like, here's my badge, you got it. I'll go do something else. But she said, no, like, you just have to, talk to so-and-so. And we'll talk about this when you go back to our mentors, right? I'm sure we're gonna talk about that later. But I had a teammate of mine who actually sat next to me, and she was a Pittsburgh woman, like through and through. You know, she always told me, like, you know, you gotta go downtown and, you know, do all that sort of stuff. But she like sat down with me and like just, you know, literally was like, listen, like open up Illustrator and let's get to it. And so she sat there behind me, like as we clicked through, like, you know, learn all the tools, learn how to do all the stuff. And I ended up like owning the project for the rest of my time there, you know. So it really worked out, right? Like, but and you make mistakes, right? Like it's unavoidable. You know, like besides that job, other jobs I've had, you know, like at Tesla, I've had Elon Musk like holler at me in the face because of mistakes I've made, and it happens. And you know, you keep pushing because you do the best that you can, and that's all you can do, right?
Wow, that's one of those things like you want to brag about, but it's like you don't want to brag about. It's like getting yelled at by something really important. It's like, yeah, that sounds very stressful. What about you, Daniel? Do you have a moment you can think about early in your career?
Yeah. I knew enough programming to be dangerous, like to myself and others. So we worked with this like kind of arcane bug tracking tool. And so I wrote a little script to try to like automate parts of the process, which was good. It worked. It was great. However, I didn't know what I was doing, and I actually like I was breaking things for my own workflow, but also disrupting my coworkers, and I ended up bringing down the bug tracker, and it was dumb. It had to be recovered from like a backup from like 24 hours earlier, and it was I screwed up like good, but it was one of those things where I was just like I was stressing about it. I was just like I was sitting at my desk going like, what do I do? Like once I figured out what like I was the root cause of the problem, and I very sheepishly fessed up and said like this is on me. And
You brought down production.
Yeah, exactly. And
what role were you? Where were you at when this happened?
This is at Web Faction. This is my first job.
Okay. So it was your first job?
Yeah. So this was the thing though. Like, thankfully this did not actually bring down customer facing stuff. Like I've got plenty of bad stories of like, oh yeah, I brought down the doc site or whatever. Like those don't faze me at all. Those are faceless people that I don't have to think too hard about. But no, for my coworkers though, like I broke things for them, and it was like it was genuinely just disruptive to their work, and so but I was really embarrassed. It was pretty early on too, and I was like, I broke the thing, sorry, like I was groveling, and I got lots of just like, shut up, don't worry about this, like I've done 10 times worse than you've done, and everyone told me their embarrassing stories of things they had broken, and so it was super stressful at the time. Like I was sure I was gonna get fired or something, and but no, it was a learning experience, and you only have to have like I think one of those where you you know.
Yeah, definitely don't need too many of those guys. That's for sure. Otherwise, you won't have a lot of more mistakes to make. But it's and I realized later in my career that it's like you always think that when you learn how to code, then suddenly like you want to use coding solutions for everything. Like code is the way to solve all the things. But it's only the right code is the way to solve all the things. Otherwise, it's like bad code just makes way more mistakes way faster, and you can really hurt yourself if you don't know what you're doing. But that's part of the learning process. It's important. Debra, do you have a stressful moment you want to share from your early career?
I mean, I have things that came back and got me into trouble later that I didn't realize were problems, or I've printed the wrong thing. I had a situation where we were getting a lot of API keys from engineers, and as part of like the samples that we were publishing in the documentation, and they weren't pulling them out. And apparently in one of the tutorials that I had written, I went into our program and I took my own, something from the command line where like it included my own API key. And then gradually we realized that we started pulling all these things out. But like recently, actually, they found this one from like 2.5 years ago, and it was belonged to me. And it was like the last one in all of our documentation. And it was super mortifying because so first of all, like I work with a lot of colleagues overseas, and like sometimes they really talk around problems, but when it comes to like rolling out the blame to somebody else, they're all, Debra's printing secret keys.
Oh no.
It was like,
Oh no.
the worst thing ever. And so I was up with these guys until like 11:30 at night, like clearing out the Google cache and appealing to Google to get these things like deleted permanently. And I copied the page over and created a new page so that I would like get rid of any trails, and even if we had deleted it. And I mean, I followed through. It wasn't like just leaving it to this Japan team to like clean up, like, because there was nighttime here. I'm just like, oh, it's not my problem. Like I stayed up and like fixed it, so I owned it, and I had no problem owning it, but it was super mortifying. And mistakes happen. Like mistakes definitely happen, and this was a mistake. And I'm not the only person that's done something like this, but yeah, it was pretty embarrassing. And they knew that it happened a long time ago, but even the guy, just the phrase that he wrote in it, and then the whole like thread in Slack keeps getting shared, and the top of it's all Debra's sharing secret keys. Nobody's bothered to edit it, and then like you can see it in different like discussions where they're all, what does she even have that key for? And like,
let's put it up on the big screen. Debra shared secret keys.
So embarrassing, but oh well, it's done. There'll be something else.
So Alrieca, I don't know if you have.
It had never been used though, which was good.
Yeah, I hope so. Oh my goodness. But listen, you owned it. You were staying up late to fix it. That you took ownership of that, and you can't ask much more in your job. Like, people are human beings. No one's perfect. It's okay. The most important thing is that you try to fix it. You raise awareness, and you get help to fix it. Especially when it's early in your career, or any time in your career. I still make mistakes all the time. Say, oh no, it's not supposed to be that way.
The other challenge I'll just quickly add was that like our onboarding process was really bad. And so like there was nobody that went through and said, these are things that you want to be careful about, or these are things that are going to help you learn about our product, or like, so it wasn't like that it was obviously it was an error, without any information about having done it incorrectly, or, so.
Yeah, it's I forgot. I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. I was thinking about swinging back to Alrieca, and I'm not sure if you have a stressful moment to share. A week is not a lot of time to have any stressful moments. Although, or if you feel like that whole week was a stressful moment, but anything that you can think of that you want to share from your first week.
Not yet. I mean,
that's a good thing. If no stressful moment, that's a good thing. We can move on to the next question.
I had an odd moment where I didn't know how to set up my equipment and stuff, and I was like, should I know about technology stuff? But not yet. Give me until next week. I plugged in the thing in the wrong part, and then I had to call them, and embarrassingly
I hope you hear from the stories that folks are telling now that it's okay, that stuff happens. Actually, I think if you don't make any mistakes, then maybe you're not pushing yourself hard enough.
They're also pleasant, and I ask questions a lot, so maybe it's the newbie thing, but they all seem to be a bit new, and they're pleasant, so nothing embarrassing yet. Check me in 2 weeks.
All right, I'll check back. But again, you don't have to find things that are stressful. It'd be great to have no stress, but I think it's just this indication that you're pushing yourself, doing something hard. You're growing. Now this question, I want to see if I can give some quick feedback, some quick answers. There's maybe a handful of skills, tools, or things that you did that were help you prepare for your first job. And Alrieca, I'll let you start. Anything you can think of that helped you either prepare for the actual work or preparing to get the job?
I think for me, the greatest tool I've had would be you. I did my degree online, as we know. did great. I didn't get a single B, but I didn't know what to do with my degree after. That's crazy, right? So I think
So a mentor.
a mentor is a great idea, because even when I doubted myself, you kept saying you can do it, and I literally wouldn't have been able to do it without you. And it's just by chance that I met you. So it's not like there was a system in place for me, or I didn't know where the resources are. So I think seek out resources to help you, have somebody that's there to help you, and somebody who knows the industry. It can't be just your mom, because your mom wants to help you, but that's not enough. So yeah, I think just having somebody who knows what they're doing to help you to know what you're doing.
Good, great advice. What about you, Booker?
Yeah, I'd just say a few things. First of all, grammar, just off the top. Curiosity, right? Like as a tech writer, like you're always representing for the audience or whoever your audience is. And so making sure to always be tracking down more information, et cetera. The ability to just let it go. Like, I think in a lot of ways, like, we are, of course, we craft things like every day, but, they're never going to be perfect. And so to a certain degree, right, you make stuff and you have to move on, right? And then I think just finally, right, like I would probably say that like whatever skills you have, like you bring to the role, and like that really enhances your ability to, right? I think that like what Debra said, like how we all come from such different places and backgrounds, like whatever skills you bring, you're able to translate them. And that's my final point.
I love it. I love it. And curiosity, by the way, is on my list of whenever people say, what do you need? What is tech writing, and would I be a good tech writer? I usually say, if you like to write, and of course, it's part of the job for most people, although not all the time. You don't have to love it, but you have to be a strong writer. And then just a natural curiosity to figure out, how do things work? Why is it that way? Who is this for? Why do they want that? It's in another life, I imagine I probably was a journalist, but I didn't end up taking that path for a lot of reasons. But a lot of why I wanted to do journalism is what I do as a technical writer. So yeah, great answer. What about you, Dan? You got anything interesting to share? What do you think your skills or tools that helped you most prepare for your early jobs?
I think like the career skill that continues to serve me very well is just showing up. You go into events like this, participating in the Write the Docs chat, going to the meetups, like I don't have to be to every single one, but like just showing up and being present for that stuff again and again. It's a slow thing, but it's not hard exactly. But you show up long enough, and other things fall into place as a consequence. So you start making connections to people. You learn things. Just like you hear something enough time, you don't have to like spend a ton of time to study it. You just become gradually acquainted with it over time, and that's not something you can fake it, right? You can cram the night before, kind of a thing. But showing up again and again, that is I think the number one thing that has served my career. Even though it's not really so much like a job skill. I mean, though obviously showing up every day is also important.
No, I love that answer, and actually, I would double down on that in saying that that even though these events, and sometimes as a college student, they can feel a little awkward, or you don't understand what you're supposed to do there, or you don't know what you're supposed to get from it, and you may leave some of them feeling like, oh, I don't know what that was about. But like you said, showing up to these things is a muscle. Like it's actually that networking and that actual professional social interaction. It's a muscle that you have to build up, and some of us sometimes atrophies a bit. And this kind of reminds me of what Alrieca was talking about during her undergrad, which was entirely online. That afterwards, that the pivoting to the job market, which now is even though Alrieca in her personal life is super personable, can have a conversation about anything, but she hadn't yet prepared in that way for the kind of professional social networking part of it, which is just as important. Like it's a skill, that building up, not just the having a conversation, but extracting information from people who have information that you need to do a job or to learn something. I think that's just as valuable as your coding and your writing skills. And it's interesting. And I definitely want to hear. Did I start with Debra, or did Debra answer this question yet? Because I'm very curious about your answer to this.
No, I haven't. So the first thing that came to mind for me was, especially as a technical writer, like empathy, because we want to really understand who the user is. I think that's really important. But then I think as far as what like keeps me going and helped me find opportunities was definitely relationship building and like just a good old fashioned dose of grit, like perseverance, because like there was a lot of jobs that I applied to and I didn't get, or they would say, no, you don't have a background in high tech, or like you can't learn agile, or like, I got a lot of like bogus answers, people that weren't willing. Alrieca, you mentioned like somebody was willing to make an investment and take a chance and say, hey, I like talking to you. This could be a good relationship. And I think our ability to build and connect and build relationships and connect with people, and asking the questions, right, and like showing an authentic interest, I think it goes a long way. And those are skills that are transferable, right? Like those are skills you don't need to be like a specialist in one area or another. You just have to have drive and passion and be like a real human being.
I have to say, I didn't prompt you all to give these kind of soft skill answers, and you see, I even put the word tools in there, thinking that of the 4 technical writers on the line right now, people I want you to know, these are some of the more technical writers that I know, and I even Alrieca early in her career, she may not think so herself, but I would push against that, in that she went and had to learn some XML for one of her grad classes, and she ended up talking about that a lot at job interviews, and that actually made her a much more appealing candidate. Things that she wanted to talk about at job, and I told her to talk about those things. That like that's a technical skill. I said, oh, if you do an XML in your grad class, I said, talk about that, talk about it a lot. So my anticipation for the answers to this question was going to be coding, APIs, was going to be, but no, each one of the panelists talked about what would probably be considered a soft skill. You heard intellectual curiosity, you heard authenticity, you heard networking, and just being available and showing up. Like, so I think that should show you something, that that what this particular field, I think, attracts are people who all that other stuff, the technical skills, degrees, and things like that. That's great. Those things are important but for other reasons. Those things should help you achieve a goal that you can suddenly see, and that that you can work towards, and be able to envision those types of challenges, to see yourself working in a certain type of job. When you're looking for a job, you got to be able to take that hat and take it and put it out, take it on, or put it on, take it off, and so, can you envision yourself doing this? Can you envision yourself doing this? But all of those things, this job attracts a certain personality type, that people who want to ask hard questions and work on the difficult thing, and to talk about this stuff as well. We're communicators at heart. So thank you all so much for those really thoughtful answers. And I do want to give my panel an opportunity to bail at this time, because I did say it was going to be an hour, and John reminded me that it's an hour and a half meeting. And I know that some folks are in really out there time zones, especially Dan, who I think is, I'm surprised. Dan, I expected you to have a pint of beer at this time of day for you to be logging on. So if I will allow my panelists to bow out if they need to.
I can stick it out.
Cool. I only have, it's interesting. I purposely, I wondered when I was making this if this was going to be enough questions, but I said I'll just keep it short, 5 questions, and we'll see how long we go. And I knew we'd fill up the time, because these are interesting people and they got lots of stuff to share. And so this question I'm super curious about, and I'm going to start with Booker, because the names on his resume are I'm super curious about, but is there a professional accomplishment that you are most proud of so far? And I'd say it could even be from your non-tech writing jobs, if that's what you want to talk about. But what are you most proud of from your professional career so far?
Yeah. I think I'm very proud of my experience at Tesla, because it is like a lot of companies, very difficult environment, like yada yada, like all those things. But I feel like it was just a big moment of growth for me. Like I was, like I said, like born and raised in Pittsburgh, and I was always very afraid of leaving. Like I was, really my long-term goal was to be the mayor there. And so I was like, I stayed like at Carnegie Mellon, because I was like, I'm the Pittsburgh guy, like I'm going to be here the rest of my life. And I just, picked up my life and moved to Reno, Nevada, where like, I didn't know anybody. And frankly, there weren't a lot of Black people. And so I was like, like, man, what am I doing here? And then I was working for like this crazy man, like at this company, like making cars, right? Like, so I am just very, very proud of, I think, like, you know, to Deborah's point, like just the tenacity in myself, like to keep going, to keep pushing, to keep learning. You know, when it was like 7 days a week, when we were doing like, you know, go work at 12 and then go home, walk your dog and go back to work, like that sort of stuff that I like powered through and came out of, right? Like, and was in some way rewarded for. And I ended up, like I said, being the lead tech writer there. And so really by the time I left, I owned the maintenance and all of the maintenance documentation for like 10,000 machines in the factory, and pretty much by myself. And so I was very proud of that. Like I built the system like from ground up by myself. Like every piece of documentation for these 10,000 machines like had came like across my desk, you know, like, of course with help and assistance from engineers and all sorts of things. And so I'm very, very, very proud of that.
Those are big things. Those are big things, enormous things. And as folks listening in progress in their career, they'll think back to that guy who talked about working at Tesla, and you'll be double impressed when you think about that. Someone been doing it a long time. Those are big time numbers under some really stress. I mean, those working environments that I'm not sure I could tolerate, to be honest with you. And I remember very clearly when you and I first met, when you were thinking about making the jump to Apple, and you told me about all the stuff that you've been doing. I'm like, how much money did they offer you? I was like, man, no. Go back there. It's like, go back there and say add a zero, and it's like then go back and say, and until they start there at the conversation, don't even respond to them, man. It's like, if you're doing things that Google and Facebook and other people they're paying people to do this, that, you know, they're easily making 30-40% more than what they're offering you right now. So that's, don't sell yourself short. So big things. Dan, how about you? What you got? What's the top of your list of accomplishments for your professional career?
I'm really proud of the stuff that I've done with the Write the Docs community. So I've spoken. I've been part of like the organizing team for the Prague conference for a few years running now. I'm a moderator for the chat, and I really love that I get to help build up other writers. That it's just incredibly rewarding, and it's a real privilege. I think especially like in kind of tech stuff, that like the work that I've done that I can share with other people, and I can talk freely about it, and that I can give advice in a pretty transparent way. People know that this is part of my career and part of my work, and they've come to expect that from me, and I'm just really grateful that that's an opportunity that I have, and it's a community that I get to be a part of, and that I'm not an island on this. That I'm not just like out for me in this work.
Yeah, that's a great one, and not expected. It's like you got, your accomplishments are enormous, and I could have picked one of your accomplishments for you to say I'm most proud of Dan's accomplishment that he did this. So to hear Write the Docs as high as someone, that's impressive. That means that community means a lot to you. Great answer. Debra, what about you? What are you most proud of from your career so far?
So when I first kind of started like networking around technical documentation, I took the advice of a technical writer turned recruiter that's widely known out here in San Francisco Bay Area. And he suggested that like I should learn to program, like I should learn Python, and I should do developer documentation. And I really wanted to entrench myself in the industry and not just stick with end user documentation. So because, you know, we're always doing new software, and there would always be a need for writing to developers, you know. So I wanted to do API documentation, and I'm really proud of the fact that like not only did I find a job that really needed to develop robust API documents, but that I've basically made a business proposal for why we needed improved documents, and I went to a bunch of different stakeholders, and I developed a business case for it, and I got them to buy a tool that we really needed, and so I think it would have been really great if I just got to a company and was able to do API documentation, but like I spearheaded a process in a place that really needed this change. And I'm really proud of that. And it's not a project right now that's done yet, but I'm really confident and I'm excited about what the future looks like around it. And like I said, it would have been enough if I just had an opportunity to do that type of documentation, but to be able to say like, I created this and it made this possible is I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah, and I have to say that I'm so grateful for our relationship, because your experience doing that inspired me. Because when I started my new job, one of my first tasks was auditing everything, kind of getting the lay of the land. And I was so bitter and complaining, like, the documentation tool we have, it sucks so bad. And you're like, why don't you just, get a new one? I'm like, but that's going to require me to do all these infrastructure changes and yada yada yada. You're like, yeah, man, that's what you just like. We just talked about this like a year ago. Remember, I was just doing that. It's like I'm still doing it, but it's like it's totally doable, and kind of it helped me kind of ground myself and to recognize that this is a hard problem, but it's my problem. And as long as I have the support of my boss to do what I think needs to be done, this is the job. It's work, and it's nice to be needed, and it's important. So thank you for sharing that one and give me another opportunity to sing your praises, and that this relationship it works both ways. That I get as much inspiration from you as any kind of help I might have been able to provide. So thank you for sharing that one. Alrieca, do you have anything that you want to share from your professional accomplishments? I feel like I could do this part for you if you wanted, because I'm so proud of you for so many things. But I'm curious to know, what would you pick as your most your favorite accomplishment, or your professional accomplishment so far?
For me, it would just be the same thing I'm proudest of myself for in this life. I keep trying, like every single day I keep moving. I keep trying to grow. I am an immigrant. I'm from Jamaica. I've been here for almost 5 years. I was able to finish my undergrad. I started my master's. So just keep trying to be a better person. I haven't made much professional accomplishments in terms of a career, but I think I'm also very happy that I'm not doing an odd job or something that doesn't contribute to my future. I was telling my friend today, she's frustrated because she's trying to find a job she likes. At least now I found a job in my field. I'm getting started. Oh, John, you're Jamaican. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Anyways, I was saying to her, she's miserable probably because her job doesn't lead to a next step in her life. I'm happy now that I'm starting to grow in my field. I think, as always, I try to be my best self, and I'm applying that to my career. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of myself for just trying.
And I have to admit, so what I'm most proud of you for is that you, even though you, it was right before the holiday that you had a flurry of you had a lot of momentum. You had like 3 or 4 interviews back to back, and we were talking about, me and my mom were talking about you over the holidays. I'm like, oh, Alrieca's about to get a job right now. What are you talking about? It's a slam dunk. And I didn't hear from you for a couple of weeks after the first of the year, which was unusual because we were talking like every week. Mm-hmm. And when I finally messaged you, it was like, hey, so how are things going? You seem real down. You were like, I didn't get the job. You were down on yourself, and I recognized that, and you had already had a plan before you met me in terms of going to grad school, letting substitute teach and pay the bills and figuring out what the next stage was. You're good at school and you liked school, so that wasn't a bad plan. But that you now we're trying to change, and it was so hard. I worried because there's that's a fork in the road, and you leaped right over those hurdles, got right back out there, and once that mindset of yours changed, it's like you didn't need much prompting. You're very motivated and talented. So it's easy to support you because I could see it. Just had to make sure that to remind you what you're capable of, because it's clear to most people who talk to you. So to see that you had that real negative moment, and I was as surprised as you. It was actually a former employer of mine who I recommended to you to apply for in a job I was super confident that you were going to get. That for you not to get that surprised me, and I'm sure surprised you as well, because you were in advanced talks with them. So that perseverance to me is my favorite accomplishment of yours that I'm proud of for you, because that was a tough moment.
And I I know people say this all the time and it's just like a cliche phrase, but I couldn't have done it without your help. So thank you. I literally was gonna just take my tech writing degree, put it under my English degree, and just keep going. So thank you.
No, you're very welcome. I'm honored to be able to help. And for the last question, I'm gonna stay with you, Alrieca. I'll go with you first. So if you, which is kind of ironic, if you were starting your career out today, which instead of last week, would you? Is there anything you would but actually? Is there anything that you would have done differently, or if you get to talk to yourself right before you graduated, or as graduation is approaching, you know, in that you had a couple of months there where you'd finish your degree and you hadn't yet found your job yet. Is there anything that you might have done differently that you or anywhere anything that under the sun that you can think of?
I like my journey a lot. I really do. I met Dr. Paz. She doesn't believe me. I don't think she does, but she's my absolute favorite. Just the way she was. So because of how I ended up here, it's just I even yesterday I was coming from class. I'm used to walking out with her after the class and chit chat by. I perhaps would have figured out a way to be more involved in school outside of just finishing the semesters and meeting with groups, perhaps even this FTC I probably could have been a part of. I would have changed that, but would I have changed my path or the journey? I don't think so. It's just how things aligned pretty perfectly for me. I mean, she kept saying to me, why aren't you using your degree? My son is a tech writer. She said it to me every week. And I sat there like I didn't want to tell her I didn't know what to do with it. And it's just, I don't know. I like my story just fine.
No, that's okay. Look, that's okay. The answer. So my answer to this question would be, my career path, I could not have made it more expedited. So I'm very appreciative of my career path. That's why I share how I did it with other people. Starting as a contractor, even before I graduated, like I could not have picked a better role for my. Like if I had to do an internship, either a free internship or unpaid internship, or a very low paying internship or a temporary internship, I was raising kids while I was in school, so I could not have changed my career path today. So that's okay. We all have ours. The answer could totally be no. That's totally fair. But I'm curious, Debra, if you had to do it all over again, would you do anything differently?
I mean, it would have been great to have started earlier. No, I mean,
That's fair.
not really. I mean, I think I think all the experiences that I've had prepare me in a way that make me a unique candidate for the work that I do. And sometimes they've been challenging, but I think like we're strong people for overcoming the challenges, and I think they're all part of our success.
Can you remind me what your degrees are in?
Oh, political science and comparative religious studies.
Got it. That's I love it. It's the kind of thing where you know inherently with those fields, like you're asking hard questions, right? Like they're always asking really tough questions. That's what technical writing questions are easy by comparison to religious studies in my mind.
But you know what, like these degrees for me, they came out of an interest in like building bridges, because they were all about like the history of my family is like I'm the first person in this country, of my birth to like, in addition to my sibling, to like live in our native country past the age of 30 in like several generations. And so like they were all of the interest is forged out of wanting to build bridges and not just build tolerance, but like an appreciation for like our diversity. And so it's all about communication and relationship building and how people can, get along seems really cliche, but like, we all have information and stories to tell. And I think so. It doesn't seem so crazy to me to like have some interest in like learning about people and just information collecting generally.
I love that. That's almost poetic. I like that. I'm gonna have to rewatch this recording later so I can quote you on that. Thank you so much for such a thoughtful answer. And Dan, we'll bring it home with you. Is there anything you would have done differently? Again, as someone who's followed your career pretty closely, I'd be hard pressed to see how you could have done anything differently. But anything that you might have wanted to have done earlier or do differently?
Yeah, I wish I left my first job earlier.
I love that. That's a great answer.
I kind of had to be pushed, like circumstances, basically, like kind of like, oh, okay, I guess now it's time, and I wish I hadn't waited. One, I turned out like I was leaving a lot of money on the table. Two, there was a bunch of work that like I just like hadn't considered up until that point. And like I ended up getting into freelancing and consulting, like, which is something like at the beginning of my career I would have been like, no, never. And in fact, it ended up being like one of the most exciting, rewarding things that I've done. And I see myself like getting back into that someday. And it's like, I wish I'd pushed myself a little bit more to at least test the waters in things that like made me uncomfortable. And I think that's the biggest difference, or the biggest thing that I would change about that. Though I can't really complain.
Oh man, I'm so thrilled with how this worked out, and thank you all for staying on the extra time, even though I promised you it'd be over in about an hour. I'm gonna leave the last 5 minutes. So again, thank you so much to our panelists. I always tell you guys that I think the world of you. If I don't, I do. I talk about you when you're not in the room because you, the four of you specifically, because I think your stories are important to inspire other potential tech writers and other content professionals. Maybe not technical writing, anything working in tech is for you, for everybody. And I think that the wonderfully diverse group of folks I got here, all different kind of skill sets, backgrounds, and now disciplines. That it's important for me to show that I have all these wonderful connections in the industry now that it was important for me to share with my alma mater, these shared with these wonderful human beings who I've come in contact with, that to show you all that your first job is the first stepping stone, and it'll be an amazing career afterwards. It starts with that first gig. But I did want to leave a couple minutes. John, I killed you. I wanted to have your FTC, I think, are you FTC president, John? I wanted to have John jump on, because John also has a pretty fun, interesting story about his first job, where I think he's still working, converted from an intern to regular full-time writer. But I'll let John take us home the last couple of minutes with his story, because I told him that I was going to go to him at one moment. He should be prepared for it, and I didn't get to it to the very end. But I did want folks who, if they hadn't heard yet John's story about how he got his first job, or talk about his first job first, so they think he could at least share that. So sorry, John, for not giving you more time on the floor, my man, but I'll leave it for you to send us off.
Yeah, sure, I can do that, and I'll try to be rapid fire since it's getting close to the time. And there's just so many great stories from each of you. Yeah, I can share a bit about mine. My first, I've had a few internships, and the first writing internship I had was actually my sophomore year, or the summer after my sophomore year, I believe, summer 2019. And that happened just by pure networking. I want to say a little bit of luck too, but I think it was just like, that's why I resonated a lot with when Daniel said just showing up. I feel like that's how it happened. It's because I was just sitting on campus, just doing a project, and then all of a sudden I got approached by Dean Sheila, and she works at the Honors College at UCF, and apparently she was starting up a program to just help students get internships. And we just started talking. It was when I was doing a group project, so she just saw us. She loves talking to students, so she saw us doing a group project in a classroom building and started talking to us. We said, "Oh yeah, we're looking for jobs or internships," and she said, "Well, I'm starting this up. I'll get you all first. I'll let you all be the first ones in the loop." And then there and then she just said, "What are you interested in?" And I said, "Writing, technical writing." And she said, "All right, I'll make a note of that." And I was like, is this why people say just networking is showing up? Because I was literally just doing homework.
That's it.
Yeah, and then after that, it just led to a series of her connecting me with just job listings and people she knew who were hiring, and just it led a field of that to just some emails back and forth, figuring out what I wanted, and her reaching out to people. And one day she connected me to someone from Lennar, they do real estate, and they were looking for just interns to do their writing and things like that. And that's when I got connected to them. She said, "Oh, they're looking for writers, and they're located in Miami." She said, "I know you're going back to Miami for the summer, so look into that." I looked into it. They were just enthusiastic about getting some writers on their team to do some things that they wanted to shape up for a while or get written up or designed for a while. So I sent in some writing samples. At that time, I didn't have too many. I was like, I'll send in some essays that I've done, and hope this is good. And apparently it was, because that's when I ended up getting that position, just as a writing intern, L&R that summer. And it was great, but I'll fast forward to my most recent internship and just the latter half of my tech journey. It's last summer. I started working at L3 Harris, and I think it really ties into that same idea of just networking, and also just I feel like also just showing up, but with intentionality too, because I got connected to it through FTC, because there is a technical writing team, integrated product support at L3 Harris, that just really wanted to connect with UCF students around that time. They wanted UCF students to start being interns, and the manager of that team is a UCF alumni. So she told me herself that I want UCF students to come work for us. And so at an FTC meeting, she was one of the presenters, and I decided, okay, I'll reach out to her. I'll just put in my application and do that. And because I was with FTC at the time as a leader, I got to just talk with her and just be part of that process, and just get to know the company a little more. And just showing up, I feel like, helped me introduce me to that company, to her, and just that opportunity, because I feel like if those things hadn't lined up, like if I wasn't part of FTC, I wouldn't have even been to that meeting, for example, and found out about L3 Harris. But then it was a similar story. I put in my application, I sent some writing samples, and I appeared at an interview that had 4 people, which was intimidating. It felt like I was in front of a council, but even more so because it was something that I was unfamiliar with. It was tech writing, but even though I feel more comfortable with software, it was for hardware. I know almost nothing about hardware at all. I'm a writing person. I feel like I am more into just things that I can see on a screen, the things that I can just move and just mechanically. So one of the first questions they asked me, would you be comfortable just working with just hardware manuals? And I said, I am willing to learn, because the real answer is I feel like I would be very scared looking at just even trying to work with one. I know the acronyms, many acronyms, so many acronyms, and I don't even know the words that attach to the acronyms, but I said, I'm willing to learn. And I think that was an important thing, because eventually just we talked more about that and talked about my background work with other writing, and it led to a conversation about, just how skills are transferable, and kind of just how, like each of the presenters mentioned earlier, it's a lot about less about the technical skills that you have and more about the character. And I feel like that came up a lot when Alrieca was telling everybody about how she got her job and got matched against someone with a lot of years on them, but didn't have that same character. And I think that's kind of the same situation that happened to me. Just even though I didn't have the exact technical things, they just saw a lot of transferable skills that I had, and the fact that I was just willing to be out there and into something that I didn't know, just with the writing skills and the drive alone. And that's when I got it. So that was last summer, and just because they try to transfer a lot of their interns into full-time positions, that's where I'm going to be working this summer after graduation as full-time. And it's something that when I first got into the job, I mean, I didn't magically learn everything. It was still very intimidating, but it was enough time over the summer to pick things up as I went, and just ask a lot of questions too. That's the thing, just being able to ask questions, that was very helpful. And I feel like that is just something that just really helped me. But that's where I'll be working after graduation. So that'll be like the official start of my TechCom career. But that's just a little bit about kind of how I got there. And
cheers.
Yeah, and also just hearing. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say, hearing everybody else speak just was really inspiring. I just want to say that too.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone. We were right a couple minutes over. I'll leave it at that. I'm sorry to get to any questions, and I saw John's answering questions in the chat. But I'll leave it at that. But by all means, get in touch. LinkedIn, Twitter, all those things. I know that John posted a tweet about this particular meeting. I've been happy to field some questions via Twitter. Like that. I'm super active on Twitter. But thank you all to my panelists. You all have done me a solid. Thank you so much. I usually never call in favors, so thank you so much for doing me this solid. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.